Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS, ready to talk some more new Who with my wonderful partner in time, wonderful friend, and apparently special guest companion recruiter, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
I am great, Charles, though I'm excited to talk this episode, but I have to share, I've been telling you the guy that at work that has been following Doctor Who, he's decided Matt Smith is only good for the comedian, the episodes. He doesn't like the drama episodes, and I almost said, you no longer can work here. Come on, I need that. So yes, I'm excited. This is a great episode to discuss, and I'm always excited when we have a guest companion, and today's is especially exciting.
Yeah, because, here at episode 211, we're going to be talking The Lodger, and this was one that apparently was specially requested by our new special guest companion coming in. So everyone, please welcome to Next Stop Everywhere, Thom Zahler.
Yay!
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing great, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a big treat for me because Jesse just keeps going on and on about you, and I know I see your posts and I see Jesse sharing your posts. So this is something I know he was looking forward to, and I know that I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you are as well.
Yeah, I just hope I can live up to the hype.
Yeah, Charles, you and I have been friends longer, but I never can remember if it was 99 or 2000 at a convention in New Orleans is when Tom and I first met.
Okay.
And we have been friends ever since.
Okay. So exactly, I'm kind of curious. How did that, how did that form? How did you was it just you started talking, thought you had some common interests, or exactly how? I'm kind of curious about the secret origin of this.
So back in the day, before I was doing more actual comic book work, when I'd set up at conventions, I'd do caricatures.
Yeah.
And I did a caricature of Jesse, and as is my wont, I start talking to the person I'm drawing to distract him from the fact that I'm staring at their face and trying not to creep him out. And we started talking about Aaron Sorkin.
Oh, okay. I know he's a big fan of The West Wing, so
yes, and Sports Night at the time. So
Kirk.
So
what do you keep chiming in?
All great things. It all starts with Aaron Sorkin. So yes.
Well, that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. I was a big fan of The Newsroom, so I totally get that.
Absolutely.
So Tom, for our listeners that aren't familiar with your work, I know that you're a great writer, great comic book artist. I know that you've done some fiction as well, and also some cartoon work as far as writing for Spider-Man Web Warriors. So, I know that Jesse was kind enough to give me your run of Love and Capes to try out, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was great. And, I know you've done some other projects, Warning Label, Time and Divine, and others. So if you would, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do and anything maybe that coming up in the future that people might want to check out?
Oh, no, talking about myself. This
I
is
know.
so hard.
Self-promotion.
Mostly I am a comic book writer and artist. Like I said, I do a book called Love and Capes, which is a superhero romantic comedy. The 5th volume of that just came out after a 5-year hiatus. I said I'd come back if I had the right idea, and then somebody gave me the right idea. And now I am doing that as a Patreon. The new series, or the new issue, so to speak, is called Love and Capes in the Time of COVID, and it's all the heroes dealing with the pandemic. Along the way, I've done I'm kind of known for doing romantic comedy comics. So I did one called Long Distance about a couple in a long-distance relationship because I really nailed that title. I did one called Time and Vine, which is about a magical time-traveling winery. The best part about that was that I had to do the research for it. So you drink a bottle from 1912, you go back to 1912, and it's based on a winery in upstate New York. And you can't write off your wine bills, but you can write off your research trips. Nice. So I did that for a while. And then I started
are the wine bottles bigger on the inside? Just kind of curious. My wife's a wine aficionado, so I'm sure she would be really interested in that.
Sadly, no wine bottles are bigger on the inside.
Oh, well. Had to ask.
Mm-hmm. I started working for a place called Webtoon. I did a series called Warning Label, which is about a girl who's cursed by her ex-boyfriend that every guy who asks her out gets the warning label of what they need to watch out for. That ran for 40-some chapters and is collected up. And then I did a series called Cupid's Arrows. That's about two-person hitman teams of Cupids that get couples together. Did 2 seasons of that. The first one's being collected up now. And then along the way, I write and draw for the My Little Pony comic book at IDW.
Which I hear is like insanely popular.
It is. And there's a Doctor Who. There's a Time Turner pony that's been at various points based on David Tennant and Matt Smith.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Did that. I've written for the Star Trek comic. I've written for the Disney Tsum Tsums comic. I've written for the Star Trek short story collection.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've started doing some animation writing. So I wrote an episode of Spider-Man Web Warriors. I wrote the first part of Contest of Champions. And it was just crazy to be able to do that and write Spider-Man and Iron Man and Hulk. It's hard writing dialogue that sounds like Robert Downey Jr. That was the big challenge. And then recently I did an episode of Knights of the Zodiac, which runs on Netflix, which is based on the Saint Seiya manga from Japan.
Oh, that's awesome. So, yeah, we actually have something kind of in common because both of us have written for Pocket Books for Star Trek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did the short story Doctors 3 for the Star Trek Strange New Worlds 2 anthology.
Okay, excellent.
So when I saw that, you had done Till Death with Bob Ingersoll for the Sky's the Limit anthology, I thought that's fantastic. I got to read this now.
Yeah.
So I got to check this out. And also the Waypoint special as well. I got to check that out too. So
yeah, I got to write Deep Space Nine, which is my favorite of the modern Star Treks.
Yes, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and just, Charles, I always like to bring this up is Thomas, very nice. I've gone to multiple conventions when he comes to Dallas, and often at Dragon Con. And I am his. I won't call booth babe, but I am his grunion, where I like, oh, hey, Tom, do you need a Coke? You need a sandwich? And so we're there. And
you're his gopher then.
Exactly. And we were in Houston at Comicpalooza right after he had started working on My Little Ponies, and the amount of people and the diversity of people, because I had never heard of bronies.
Yes.
I was like, what is this world?
This is a thing, yeah.
This is a thing, and it was this amazing world. And it is, I have been, and
there's so Tom. Hi, Tom.
That will go, and he does, he'll do, sketches for people, commissions, and they go crazy. And he'll ask them, "Who's your favorite pony?" And they will describe. It's perfect. It is just hilarious.
Yeah, it's a really motivated. Being a Star Trek fan, I'm used to people who are a little bit socially awkward and way too into stuff. And My Little Pony fans are the same thing. Like 95% of them are the most awesome people in the world. There's 5% that's kind of weird, but you get that in any group.
Right.
So
especially any fan.
And I've gotten to do a lot of really cool things because of being on My Little Pony or working on My Little Pony. Just like one of the times I was in Houston for a pony convention, we got to take a tour of Kennedy Space Center or Johnson Space Center. I'm sorry, Johnson. Just things like that are
Isn't Kennedy
bizarre.
in Florida? Yeah.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. That's awesome. You get those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of curious before we get into our Doctor Who discussion, because I don't want everybody to think that we've forgotten about Doctor Who. What spurred the idea of wanting to talk The Lodger? I'm just kind of curious.
So I saw a list that you put out.
Yeah.
And the first season of the Matt Smith run is one of my favorite of the modern Doctor Who's. I find it's hard to compare classic with modern because storytelling's so different. It's like Star Trek and current Star Trek. And in my heart, I would love to hit, like, if I ever got the chance to write Doctor Who, I would like to think that I would write Amy and the Van Gogh episode.
Okay.
Vincent and the Doctor.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I know that I would have written something much more like The Lodger.
Well, with your romantic comedy background, and this is definitely a romantic comedy kind of episode.
Yeah, and as much as I want to write like some big moving Doctor Who thing, I know my wheelhouse is small personal stories where the Doctor has to pretend to be a human, and playing with all the humor that's part of it, and that's what draws me to it. I think it's a great 1-2 punch between those two episodes.
Okay, so you kind of identified it with it then a little bit.
Yeah. This is very much the kind of episode that I would do.
Okay, that's great. And Jesse obviously had no problem talking Matt Smith, I'm guessing.
No, and in fact, I love this. When I rewatched the episode, I remember how fun it was, how quickly, the Doctor settled in, and I had never heard of, James Corden. So now then, of course, you go, oh, hey, it's that guy.
Yeah.
But at the time, being a U.S., I had not known anything about him, and he's so likable. There's so much things, and I'm a sucker for romantic story too. And you just see them too. You're like, okay, is the Doctor going to play Cupid? Speaking of, and I just thought they did that really well. They executed the mystery, the fish out of water, and the romantic story, all three really well.
And it's fun. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny with Matt's Doctor because, they kind of depicted him as a fish out of water when it comes to women or relationships, anything of a kind of an emotional level. And to see him here, like you said, playing matchmaker, I think it was a great format for telling a different type of 11th Doctor story, and also kind of maybe humanizing the Doctor just a tiny bit in the process.
I totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really interesting Doctor Who story in that it's one where the Doctor says not to travel. It's very much like the opposite of his normal routine, but it works for the people he's talking with, and I think it's just beautiful.
Yeah, and not to get into too many other details, right? But the idea he can't use his toys, his technology, and he's trying to figure that out. And when we get to that subject, we'll talk about that more.
All right, so let's dig into this a little bit. This episode, written by, of course, Gareth Roberts, who wrote the previous episodes, The Shakespeare Code and Unicorn and the Wasp, Planet of the Dead with Russell T. Davies. And then he writes the future episodes after this, Closing Time, which is a sequel of sorts to this story, and The Caretaker for the Peter Capaldi era. So, obviously, very well versed. He also co-wrote the pilot episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures, Invasion of the Bane with Russell T. Davies. And he's done some other things, various novels, comics, etc. And let's see, this episode was directed by Catherine Mooreshead and is the 11th episode of Series 5 from 2010. Hard to believe this one's got 10 years of mileage on it already.
That is kind of funny.
It's like, where does the time go, as the saying goes. Mm-hmm. Of course, starring Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, Karen Gillan as Amy Pond, although we only get to see her, here and there. Not really. This is more of a Amy Light episode from Matt's season. It's more of a showcase for Matt. Gives Karen Gillan a little bit of a break, and gives the Doctor a chance to interact with somebody besides his companion, primarily in the story. So, of course, we have James Corden as Craig Owens, who, of course, turns up later in the kind of sequel, Closing Time. Best known to American audiences, of course, as the current host of the Late Late Show. I was a big fan of Craig Ferguson's Late Late Show. So it was a little jarring to switch over to James Corden. I don't think I've still adjusted from that. But I know a lot of people enjoy the show. He's also been in movies like Ocean's 8 and the horrible 2019 Cats. So,
Okay.
So consider yourselves warned there on that one.
Okay.
Daisy Haggard, of course, plays Sophie, and she also returns for closing time. And she's notable to Harry Potter fans because she did the voice of the Ministry of Magic lift elevator in both Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So if you're kind of curious, next time you check out those movies, you go like, oh, hey, there's Sophie's voice. No pun intended. And she's also turned up in one of my particular favorite BBC shows, Ashes to Ashes, which was a sequel to The Great Life on Mars. If you've ever checked that series out, highly recommend it if you haven't. And trivia, The Lodger was based on a short mini-comic of the same name, written by, of course, Gareth Roberts, that appeared in Doctor Who magazine number 368, which I just happen to have here in my hot little hands.
Yay!
With some artwork by Mike Collins. So this is the comic book version. Well, at least the mini comic version in Doctor Who magazine, the strip. And interestingly, this the comic version features the 10th Doctor instead of Matt Smith's 11th Doctor, who in this version spends several days with Mickey Smith in his flat, waiting for Rose Tyler and the TARDIS to arrive in a few days. And Hay, of course, is the Doctor, so of course by chance he saves the Earth in the process by hiding it from a passing space fleet from a violent alien race. Because, hey, it's Doctor Who. And apparently showrunner Stephen Moffat was just loved this story idea, so he encouraged Roberts to adapt it for television when he took over the show as showrunner. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And, if you ever get the chance to check it out, I know it's probably a little harder to track down. It's going to be one of those Panini Books trade paperback collections of their comic strip run. So from the 10th Doctor era. So you might want to check those out. That'd be probably a good way to track it down unless you want to spring for the actual Doctor Who magazine on eBay or something.
Okay.
And Roberts apparently planned to use the classic era villain Meglos in the story, but decided against it because they were kind of similar looking aliens, the Vinvaci, in the final David Tennant era story, the End of Time. So I guess he thought that, well, they just saw some cactus people in Tennant's finale and didn't need to bring Meglos back for whatever reason. And the Doctor playing football in this story is a coincidental reference to the fact that Matt Smith was an aspiring professional football player until he had an injury and turned to acting instead. Apparently, when Gareth Roberts was writing this story, he stated that the football scene was, always going to be carried over from the comic book story. And it just so happened that, when Matt Smith was cast, he just happened to have that football background. So it's a complete coincidence, as it turns out.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I do know, I have read that he was he had done that, and he is very comfortable on the pitch, so to say.
Yep. And there's a nice little Easter egg for old school fans like yours truly. When the Doctor is in the shower and he's singing a song, which is La Donna è Mobile, this is apparently a same song that his third incarnation sang in the John Pertwee era story Inferno.
Okay.
Gareth Roberts loves to put in little Easter eggs from classic era here and there, and that was just one that I thought was kind of interesting. So that's trivia, unless you want to count the postcard on Craig Owens' fridge, which eagle-eyed viewers probably noticed was a postcard advertising the Vincent van Gogh exhibition at the Musée d'Orsay from Vincent and the Doctor.
Very nice. Yes.
So we have three topics today. Topic number one, let's talk the 11th Doctor and Craig because, hey, this is what the primary basis for this story, the prime structure for this story. So, Tom, since you're a special guest companion this time, why don't we start with you? obviously, in the premise of this one, we have the 11th Doctor leaves the TARDIS, but then the TARDIS suddenly dematerializes with Amy Pond still inside, vanishes, and so the Doctor's kind of left trying to figure out how to get her back. And in the meantime, he accepts an advertisement for a roommate, a flatmate, for Craig Owens. And apparently there's something very interesting going on at that property. And that's kind of the setup for this one. So I'm kind of curious, what are your thoughts on the Doctor meeting Craig and the Doctor, in the meantime, trying to figure out how to rescue Amy?
Well, I love the chemistry between Corden and Matt Smith. I think Corden is particularly talented at being likable, and it works really well for the story. Corden can play like 18 different kinds of frustration, and Matt Smith can give you 19 different ways to be frustrated or become frustrated. I love Matt Smith Doctor having to try to pretend to be normal when he's so very much not normal, and he can't help himself. He thinks he's really good at it, but he's not.
Right.
And like just from not knowing how much money is, like, is that a lot?
3,000 pounds. Yeah.
Those kind of things. Or he's got a line where he's talking about where he learned to cook, and he said, I learned to cook in Paris in the 19th century. Wait, no, that was 17th. Is that? I'm not used to doing them in the right order. And just that, it's the little things that trip him up. But how good he is at playing football or being in the call center that he works for, and
he's like a natural at both.
Yeah, that he can solve those complicated problems. And I love too that he, for as much as the Doctor is generally portrays himself as being completely oblivious to other people, like he's focused on the problem. He'll make the jokes to keep himself interested and to impress his audience, but you don't always see him paying attention to the nuances of social interaction. And in this one, he pegs Craig and Sophie right away. He doesn't make too big a deal of it, but he notices that she's got 2 sets of keys in the house. When he gets her to think about moving, it's not an accident. Like, he knows where that conversation is going long before that conversation starts. And you get to see him put all his years of actually interacting with people on the line. He doesn't know social nuances. He doesn't know how a particular era necessarily interacts, but he knows how people work.
Yeah. And I know obviously when he's paired up with Craig, it's obviously a very interesting odd couple there, where the Doctor being alien and as you said, just unfamiliar with normal human life, at least chronologically, and going in this in an actual order. It's very it makes for an interesting dynamic, because the Doctor, probably without even realizing it, finds something that is lacking a little bit with Craig, and Craig kind of needs the Doctor to help him get his life on track and figure out what's most important in his life. And so Craig, obviously, we find out that he's struggling. He, at work, apparently he has ideas for efficiency, but to make his job, to move up a little bit and get more attention from his boss, but he's too stuck in his ways. He's afraid almost to move up and move forward with his life. And then he has this friendship with Sophie, and he apparently has deep feelings for her, but he's so afraid to take things to the next level, to express his love for Sophie. And there's a great little bit right at the beginning, in the teaser for the story, where he finally tries to get up the gumption to go out and tell Sophie, who he thinks is on the other side of the front door, that he loves her. And just as he's doing that, well, hey, the Doctor's right out there accepting his want ad for it. And And the doctor kind of like, well, thank you, Craig.
Yes.
Thank you for the compliment. So the doctor almost has to kind of play matchmaker and romance counselor to these two and get them both on track. So Jesse, what did you think about this?
Yeah, you guys have talked a lot about it, right? But Craig is stuck and he's afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And, afraid to take step forward because what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? And the doctor, as you said, both of you, kind of subtly pushes him to like, it's okay not to be afraid. And then once you fight an alien, hey, what's going on? I do love that. One of the things that I was really happy with that I think you catch with multiple viewings is the Craig talking about, well, it's just strange. My roommate ended up inheriting money from this relative he never knew about and has gone on a trip. And you like, okay, obviously in a Bill and Ted thing, right? Like,
yes,
because the 10th Doctor can't use the TARDIS now, but he used the TARDIS later to go do that so that they could win that and get that. And I just like, oh, that is so cool. And he's done that a couple other times. And it's like with Donna, the big reveal, right? When we see Donna the last time. So I love that little part. I do. The idea of and by the way, I'm in. If they want to do a sitcom, The Odd Couple, with the Doctor, and I'm in. Like, okay, let's do this a miniseries because it was really funny, and I love what Tom mentioned. Right, the Doctor's irritating, but he doesn't know he's being irritating. He doesn't know that. You don't jump ahead and do the free kick. You don't do this. But he also has a great heart. So I do that. Couple of nitpicks. Why would the extra kit fit Matt Smith when you have two very different bodies? So, but I did love that Matt's had 11 on the number of his football kit, which was, I thought, very, very cool. I just love both of them, their chemistry, Craig getting frustrated and like, no, and the Doctor kind of working through it. It just was, it works, the chemistry between them.
Yeah, they have a great dynamic. Trying to think. So, guys, what did you make of the Doctor trying to help Amy in this story? Because one of the things that we find out is that he's using an earpiece, almost like a Bluetooth earpiece, to talk to Amy in the TARDIS, trying to get a handle on what's going on inside the TARDIS, because obviously he's not there, and trying to figure out a way to bring her to get the TARDIS to materialize so that he can get back. And there's some great stuff, and obviously we're going to talk about Amy here shortly. But what did you make of him? Trying to create that device in his bedroom, and the doing things like talking with the cat outside in the hallway, and essentially piecing this whole thing together, this whole mystery, to the realizing, getting an idea of like, well, he's analyzing little things. He makes a big deal about the rot on the ceiling.
Yes.
Makes a joke about it. Well, I guess I'll call myself the Rotmeister. And
no, yes.
Yeah. So what did you guys make of him piecing together this mystery?
So one of the things that when I'm not podcasting, right, I have managed tech support teams. And as my guys have talked about, not only do you have to explain to the client who's on the phone what to do, you have to have the client with their eyes tell you what they're seeing, right? So, and you get the feeling the Doctor uses the TARDIS more by feel. Like I don't know if both of you, if you've talked to relatives and like, oh, I love this, what's the recipe? And like my mom will tell you, I don't know. I just throw these things together and I've never thought about writing it down, right? I feel like in a lot of ways that's how the TARDIS is driven by the Doctor. And so having to think like, okay, move to the right 2 steps, Amy, and try this lever, I thought of that like he's having to do tech support over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
What did you make, Tom?
I like seeing how familiar Amy was with the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Because you don't get the impression very often that the Doctor shares his knowledge of how it works. We've seen River steal it. We've seen other people use it, but his companion's usually not one of the drivers. And I think it shows how he was bringing her in, that he could reference specific parts on it, even when he wasn't getting into the trouble of having to say 2 steps to the right, that he could say, look at this part of the TARDIS, and she would know which one he's talking about. And I don't recall that happening with Rose, so that's one of the few times that I remember the Doctor bringing the companion into the piloting. And I think some of that is because she is becoming so alone, because this is after her fiance disappears.
Yeah, Rory.
Rory disappears. So it's nice to see how he's trying to close that gap and bring up that distance with her. And I love the low tech way he has to deal with it. Like the actual mystery is not the important part, but it's fun watching him build things or look at a screwdriver and ask where the on switch is.
Yes, that was a good
which
one.
is one of
Good
my
moment.
favorites. It's nice seeing how resourceful he is, and we've seen it with this version of the Doctor in the 11th Hour. And he solves everything without a TARDIS and a screwdriver, and it's nice to see that it's not the gimmicks, it's the guy.
Yeah, it is, and especially it's kind of interesting because with this particular TARDIS control, the console room, essentially looking like a bunch of cobbled together objects. Like it's like almost like part pinball machine, part toaster, part whatever. And so he's kind of having to describe, like he describes the zigzag control and to Amy. And he's like, no. Like you said, you have to take 2 steps to the right. And that one, that's the one you push or you jiggle around. And so I have to think, especially you would think she would be going, why don't you label this stuff? We might need it someday. Someday I might need to help you with this. But no, apparently never comes up. And but Amy, to her credit, hangs in there, even though obviously she gets a little understandably frustrated from time to time. So now, what did everybody make of getting back to the Doctor and Craig? What did everybody make of the football match? The King's Arms, where the Doctor puts on the uniform and essentially surprises everybody with how good he is, and in the process kind of shows up Craig right in front of Sophie, irritating him. This almost seems like the beginning of Craig's real frustration with the Doctor. That the Doctor will go to he plays the position, and then like he goes to his own job and is better at his own job than Craig is, apparently, and Craig just gets increasingly frustrated, and the Doctor, of course, being enigmatic about what's really going on, it kind of all boils to a head, to the point where Craig feels like he has to kick the Doctor out because he can't take it anymore. And the Doctor turns around and headbutts him, because apparently that's the only way you could pass on that information was, a full headbutt. And probably giving Craig half of a concussion in the process, I imagine. And but Craig at that point learns exactly what the Doctor is and what he's doing, and things kind of change rather quickly from there. So what did everybody make of all that? What did you make of all that?
Well, I love the football scene. The Doctor is doing that period, and it's easy to see him get caught up in it and not realize what he's doing. And it becomes very natural that the Doctor is very much being him and not realizing how it's causing Craig to get jealous, or in which ways he is, which I think it's nice when you have the conflict come out of the characters and not artificial, because it's not just about keeping the secret. The thing that gets Craig the most upset is the things that he's doing as a roommate and not the things that he's doing as a guy undercover trying to figure out what's going on upstairs. And it's nice when characters get to act like logically, like they're totally, they make sense, they're in character, and that's what causes the problems. Just that kind of conflict. And especially, I like that the Doctor doesn't, while he's pushing, he always pushes people to be better, to be more. Mm-hmm. He's not judging Craig for wanting to stay where he is. He's getting him to drill down on why he feels that way and to get him to make the move on Sophie. But like I said earlier, I just think it's really interesting that for a guy who picks up random people and takes them on adventures, he's not trying to do that to Craig. He's not telling Craig that he needs to travel. He's telling Craig that he needs to figure out why he wants to be there, and those are two different things. But it's nice seeing the Doctor not be overly judgmental, or it shows that he doesn't. Yeah, and it shows that he realizes that different people need different things, which I think is really. I don't know, it's kind of that live and let live thing, but it shows that he's got a wide expanse for what he thinks people can do.
Yeah, I really like at the end, right, the Doctor asks Craig, hey, would you want to? And, Craig's like, no, I've seen that. So I've shared on social media my latest obsession is Ted Lasso. I just adore that show, and it's set with an American coaching football in England, and so I love seeing those scenes, and especially the idea where the Doctor's like, well, let's see if I'm any good, maybe, 'cause,
I don't know, maybe let's all find out together.
Yeah, it's my 11th generation, regeneration. Maybe, was a previous Doctor good at the guitar, or was it, the 12th Doctor is the first one that was good with the guitar? So the idea, turns out I am pretty good. And then I have as one of my quotes, the interaction between him and Sean after the match, which I just loved. I thought that was just really funny. Yeah, that was great.
All right. Anything else about the 11th Doctor and Craig that anybody wants to talk about before we move on, or is everybody good before we move on to Amy and Sophie?
In this alternate world where we are getting the odd couple with Craig and the Doctor, scenes of the football match would be in the credits.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. So we talked a little bit about Amy and how she's struggling in the TARDIS, trying to help the Doctor figure out how to rescue her from not being able to materialize. So let's talk a little bit about Sophie, because Sophie, we find out, is Craig's co-worker at the call center. And so apparently that's how they met, became friends, started hanging out all the time. And and I find it personally very interesting, because that's kind of what my wife Lori and I did was, we got to know one another. We had mutual friends like Jesse, and from Titan Talk to Titan Zappa that we belonged to way back in the day. And we started just, hanging out, watching TV and whatnot, and then that developed into something more. So with Craig and Sophie, essentially that's what happens, is that they start developing feelings for one another, and they're without even realizing it, they're ready to take it to the next level, but because Craig is so stuck in a rut and doesn't want to budge from that, and Sophie isn't sure about how to even broach the subject with Craig. She goes over there, but isn't exactly sure why. Entirely sure why. They're not able to develop their relationship and grow and become a couple. So obviously the Doctor has, like we talked about, playing matchmaker. So what did everybody make of Sophie and her desire to, we find out that she has ambitions. She wants to do more. And the Doctor encouraging that and trying to kind of nudge her out of her own rut. Jesse, you want to go first on this one?
Sure. Yeah, we have a miniature Hallmark movie here, in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, they both are having feelings for each other, but they don't want to share, right? Because once again, they're afraid. Like, I don't want to open up because then what if you don't feel that same way? I really like her, and I like the doctor, as Tom mentioned earlier, right? Pushes her. Not necessarily because he really thinks she should go study primates. It's like let's her come to an idea and maybe let Craig realize, oh wait, and I think she's braver of the two, and I think she is going, okay, I think she's sending signals his way, and God love him, Craig is just not seeing them. So I really liked her. I liked her interaction, and and we talked about, right, Craig being upset that the doctor kind of outshined him during the match, but she was just proud of the team, right? Like, she was not like, oh, your roommate.
She wasn't playing favorites at all.
No. Yeah, she was just excited about it. So I loved her interactions and the way that she's sending that vibe to him. Hey, what are we going to do? And he's just not – he isn't picking it up.
Yeah, he's kind of clueless.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, what do you think? What do you think about the doctor kind of getting Sophie out of that comfort zone?
Well, as a guy who writes romantic comedies.
Yes. As an expert in the field,
yes.
shall we say, yes.
I love that Sophie has something other than the relationship that she wants, because that's an easy trap to fall into. Lesser writers do it all the time, where the characters want to get together, and that's what they're trying to do. And it's always great when the characters have some other desire that's not the other person, because it makes them a much more well-rounded character. It makes them more interesting. And it's good to see that she's not just waiting for Craig. Like Jesse said, she's sending signals. Craig's missing a lot of them, but he was going to tell her he loved her in the beginning. He needs a very safe space, and you see him get up to the edge, and like even at the beginning of it, he's willing to cross it, and then something knocks him off his game, and then suddenly he's back at zero. And it takes him so much to get up the head of steam to change things, and it takes a lot less given the fact that she has a conversation with the doctor and starts thinking about changing her entire world. She's capable of moving faster than Craig is, and it's trying to line those two things up. And it's great that they're both interested in each other. It does a really good job of, like, the doctor catches Craig fondling the keys, but he also picks up that there are two sets of keys, which in rewatching this, there was a moment where I'm like, wait a second, where did the keys go? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he teases Sophie about having, like, oh, you must like this place too because you have two sets of keys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he picks up on all that, and they're both interested in each other. It's not just that Sophie's waiting. She's trying to set the stage and make it easier for Craig. And she's doing things that she thinks will change the situation, and they're not, because they're slightly out of step with each other.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see a couple that they may not be on the same page, but they're on the same chapter, and it's just getting them to line up.
Yeah.
And that's so much better than, again, it's characters being true to themselves and making rational decisions rather than characters deciding. It wasn't that she gave him an ultimatum about going to work with the primates, or that came out of nowhere and suddenly she has to make a change that's completely outside the realm of her character. It is very natural for the two of them. Given the fact that we've never met these characters before this episode, it does a lovely job of, you just feel like you've known this relationship forever.
Yeah, because it's a lot of people, I think, can identify, especially, like I said, myself, who, I had that kind of stuck in a rut relationship until we took things to the next level. So I think a lot of people could identify with this and the frustration involved, where that, well, should I tell her? Should I not tell her? And, that fear of making a change, making that big move. And, so based on what I was listening from you, you don't really see Sophie as waiting for Craig to get his act together. Is that right?
No, I think she's think she's waiting for him to make a move, but she's not holding everything back.
Him.
She thinks, and she thinks that she is giving him signs so that he can make that move. She's not, or, a lot of times in these kind of relationships, like anything short of a neon sign is something that Craig is going to miss.
Mm-hmm.
But she thinks everything is a loud neon sign, and to Craig they're all whispers.
So I'm going to jump in just for a moment, right? That scene in Sports Night where Jeremy's at the bar, right? And he says, I don't pick up signals. And she writes a note and throws it in his face, right? Like, because he says, I would need someone to give me this. And,
like a penalty flag?
Yeah,
football.
Exactly.
Yeah, he says, I need someone to write it down on a sign and hit me with it.
And she sits there and writes it on a bar napkin and hits it on, I'm telling you, I like you. And I do think that she sends the message, right, that if you don't wake up, that's okay. I'm okay. I have a life and I'll do something. And that's when the doctor brings up, when she kind of shares, well, I've been thinking about doing this. And the doctor's like, oh, you should. It's very – you brought this up, Tom, and it is one of the things that is a cliche in Lifetime, Hallmark Channel holiday movies, right, is, oh – you have a new job, and oh, by the way, you have to be there Christmas Eve. The flight's leaving Christmas Eve. Like, okay, what are the odds, really? Like, you cannot tell a new job, hey, nothing's going to happen between Christmas and New Year's. Why don't I just start January 2nd? But no, they put this artificial, I have to do this, and that they don't do that cliche here.
Well, it's, the ticking clock, I guess, to get things going a little bit. But, one of the things I thought was interesting was Craig's reaction, because it seems like the doctor was the catalyst that Craig and Sophie needed to stir things up out of the rut. And with the doctor talking to Sophie and getting her to say, well, hey, I'd like to go to Africa and see the monkeys out there. And Craig, he there's a little bit of frustration with this, because he realizes, well, this is what Sophie wants, to go out there and adventure, and I'm just comfortable here. I don't want her to go. And he kind of gets a little upset, with her when talking about, like, well, no, you just want to go off to Africa and see the monkeys. And so what did you guys think of Craig's frustration with Sophie, because she wanted to move forward and not just sit on the couch watching TV all the time with Craig?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just him coming out of his comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. The fear?
Because the fear and just that things are good here, why would we do something that could go wrong or something that's really difficult? Like, when he talks about other places, he says he doesn't really see the point in it. But when he does get together with her, suddenly he says, oh, well, I can understand going to Paris now if I'm going with you. So when he's answering the question before, he's answering it very much from, like, a him-centered point of view where, oh, I don't really want to do that. I don't see what the point is. I'd rather be here. But once he starts couching it in terms of how she reacts to it and living the experience through her, his perceptions change on it. So I don't think it's that he just doesn't want to travel. It's just that he needs to experience it through someone else to see what the point of it is, or to see the excitement of it, because we all have this in relationships where there's something that we wind up liking a lot because the other person brings you into it or drags you into it or makes you do something that is outside your comfort zone. And I think that's a natural way of showing it, and it's just that they've been in this comfortable groove for so long that it takes something a lot bigger. It takes, a Time Lord showing up on his door to really, knock the apple cart over. But again, like I said, if the doctor hadn't shown up, I think the two of them would have gotten together. It just would have been like in a couple years from this episode.
Yeah, it would have taken a lot longer.
End of the episode.
Yeah. And I think one of the things too that the reason why Craig is so upset is the frustration with the doctor keeps okay, well, then this guy is weird, right? And then does the football, and then he does my job, and now then he's pushing my friend to leave.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why are you interfering with my life? Why are you doing this? And so that frustration kind of, and I think that's where a lot of his boiling, that anger is. He's just like, okay, I had a nice, sensible life. We had food. We watched TV on the couch. We're all comfortable. And now then you're messing everything up. And I love how he plays that.
Yeah. James Corden, I mean, James, for those who don't know, he was also on a romantic comedy called Gavin and Stacey in the UK. So obviously he was a very natural fit for this type of story, I think. Mm-hmm. It was pretty good casting, I thought. All right. We could skip ahead to the next topic unless anybody has anything specific about Sophie, because I thought in the next topic we could talk about how also, in addition to talking about the lodger and the control room, the real lodger or hologram lodger, we could also talk about how that control room sequence is where Craig and Sophie finally get on the same page. And they finally figure things out. And so it's obviously the big culmination of all that hand-wringing and all the Craig's frustration and everything. Everything kind of comes out in that moment. So as we get into the subject, what did you think? What did you guys think, for one, of the mysterious man upstairs and that whole, that premise that, well, hey, it's just a perception filter that's concealing this spaceship. And also, what did you make of Craig and Sophie finally figuring things out? So, Tom, any thoughts on that?
The spaceship story, if I think about it too much, it probably starts to fall apart. Mm-hmm. Like it's a particularly weird construction, but it's not there to be a good science fiction idea. It's there to be a crucible for their relationship. And it becomes a tap dancing act where as long as you're talking fast enough and things are happening fast enough, it's giving you enough to keep going. You don't have to focus on, why would you build a ship this way? Why would it be able to do exactly these things? So it functions for what it needs to do for the story, and it does that really well. I like that by the time
like the
Craig and the
of the
Doctor
story.
go in. Yeah. And it's just going fast enough that it's like, yeah, we know what it is, but come on, this is not the important part. The important part is the story we're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Not how we're getting there. And I like that Craig and the Doctor almost have a Dr. Donna relationship, that he knows the Doctor pretty well at this point because of the two headbutts. And just when it's like, is it safe? Is it safe? Are you lying? Well, of course I'm lying. And he still goes for it. Like, that shows a trust in a character that he didn't have before. And the scene between the two of them, it's a point where he stops thinking and starts doing. And it's a really strong scene delivered by actors who are really, really endearing at that point. And the spaceship is just building to get you to that point, but the payoff is so good that it doesn't matter if it doesn't completely hold up, because it's totally worth the journey to get there.
Yeah, that's very similar to my thought. Like, why are they needing a pilot, and what are they needing, and like, it kind of looks like a TARDIS, but it's not really a TARDIS. And why is there perception filter? Oh, just go with it, right? I love the concept that there's not truly a second floor, right? Like, I remember when
it's a
I
very
watched
Stephen Moffat idea, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, and watching the second time, this weekend, I went, oh yeah, I like that twist. That was a good twist, because I did not see it happening the first time. And the shadowy person at the head of the stairs asking for help was just creepy enough, right? Like one of Charles's favorite things, he loves when Doctor Who is creepy. And this was it was a fun creepy, right? You're like, oh no, they're, and I need help.
It's a
and
good
all these
hook
things.
because,
it was a really good hook.
You want to make it a Doctor Who story, so you have to throw a little bit of creepiness in there.
Yeah, and it was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what Doctor Who does really well is it makes really benign objects super creepy. My cousin was the one who pointed this out to me, that it's the voice box on the door that's creepy. Like, they make scarecrows creepy, and they make statues creepy. Like, if there's a show that would make a lawn sprinkler creepy, it would be Doctor Who. It doesn't do gore, it doesn't do horror. I mean, they can do that, but it's never the really disconcerting stuff that happens in Doctor Who is everyday objects that get really spooky.
Yeah, it's
almost intercom. That's what I meant by voice box. When the intercom starts talking and bringing people
in.
Yeah.
In the Empty Child and whatnot. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. So, or the typewriter that types by itself. That kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. Obviously a lot of the fun of writing Doctor Who is to come up with these ideas that, okay, what unexpected objects, what unexpected ordinary everyday objects could I use that would actually be frightening if you kind of thought about it in a different way? And, that's where the creativity comes in, to take those objects, like Thom said, and turning them into something, a little bit sinister, perhaps, for everybody to enjoy. So, the one thing that I was a little puzzled by was the Doctor, they come up with this explanation for the Doctor being like, it would be really, really bad if the Doctor placed his hand on that console, because apparently he would be too much for it and would somehow end up destroying the solar system in the process. I'm not sure how that works realistically, but or do you think it was more that maybe the Doctor was just making all that up and he was just like, completely BSing everything and going, I can't touch this thing, but Craig, why don't you put your hand on it? I think that would work much better. And think about Sophie and whatnot. And so, do you think he was, because we know that Rule 1, the Doctor lies. So, do you think that maybe he was lying about that to kind of urge Craig into some kind of action at that moment?
So
I don't think so.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
okay.
I don't think so, because I think the Doctor at that point is the really trite, we're giving him all the power he wants kind of thing, where it's looking for somebody who wants to travel and wants to leave, and the Doctor would be way more than that than it could handle. Like a regular person who wanted to leave enough, that would be okay, but someone who has been traveling for hundreds of years, that's going to blow it up. I totally buy that part. And that to fix the problem, he needs someone who's the exact opposite of that, and that's Craig. He needs someone who has no desire to leave whatsoever to shut it down.
Yeah, I really like the way Charles was explaining that, but.
Oh, good. Explain to me then, because I was totally lost.
Yes, right. Like the idea of like, okay, I need this. But I like the idea that because the Doctor knows how settled Craig is currently, and him thinking of, Sophie, he would be centered and I want to be here, which would be the exact opposite of what this, the ship needs. So I like that thought a lot, Tom. That's a really, the Doctor thinking ahead of that and to do that. I do think also, if I can have it both ways, I like the idea of the Doctor also being a chess player, and I also think this will move Craig ahead so that, he's made this thing now that he's going to be more comfortable. As we talked about earlier, once you fought aliens and an imaginary second floor, it's not a big stretch to tell someone you're friends with, hey, by the way, I think I like you more than a friend,
Yeah, it's getting over that initial fear, in this very fearful moment. because there's all this drama going on, all this chaos. The doctor's acting like, oh, the world could end if I end up touching this thing. So it's like this impetus that gets Craig to finally confess his love, and Sophie to say, well, about time, you idiot. Thanks for finally, getting a clue here and figuring things out. But it works out, and Craig is very appreciative of how everything settles down, because once they get out of there and they realize, well, hey, that entire first floor was just a perception filter and wasn't really there. Everything settles down, and Craig's appreciative. He gives the doctor a spare set of keys, or the doctor tries to return his keys, and Craig's like, no, you keep them. And even though he kind of figures, well, maybe the doctor will never come back and use them, I still want you to have them, and the doctor keeps them. He agrees, which I thought was a nice little symbol. Is a great symbolism, I think.
A very sweet way to end that. I agree.
Yeah. I love the idea of Craig being able to give the doctor something after the doctor did so much for him, and to be able to say, essentially, now you have a home, you have a place, because at this point he hadn't found Gallifrey yet.
Right.
So it's very much, now you have somewhere you can go. Like, you can always come back here.
Yeah, exactly. So you have a home here, and you don't have to keep wandering if you choose not to. Yeah. One of the things also we get is a little, obviously the recurring Crack in Time thread that runs throughout Series 5, and we get Amy starts to become aware of that she's lost something when the doctor tells her to get a red pen out of his pocket so that she can write and leave the Bill and Ted note to leave for her, so that they can go back in time and leave that note for the doctor to get. She goes through his pockets and finds, oh, hey, that engagement ring, that Rory's engagement ring to Amy. So, when you guys watch this for the first time, obviously, in a rewatch, it's not going to have the same effect. But do you remember how you felt watching that for the first time? In maybe the shock of like, oh, she's going to figure things out, or we'll see where this goes. Does that bring back any memories?
I'm trying to remember, because it's been
if not, that's okay.
So very long.
It's 10 years ago, so I get that.
Yeah, especially if you don't factor in that 2020 has been 30 years long. But I think when I saw it and not knowing, because I probably wasn't paying attention, not knowing how many episodes were yet to come, which will throw off your pacing of something, I think because early on in the season, you have the scene where Amy kisses the doctor. And I was waiting to find out that Amy thought that he was going to propose to her.
Oh.
That the ring was for her, but it wasn't from someone else.
So you thought there'd be like some Three's Company misconception thing going on here.
Essentially, yeah. Like give her, when the doctor needs to keep her close to know what's going on, give her a reason to run.
And that is exactly my thought too. In fact, I was like, oh my goodness, Amy's going to think this is for her from the doctor. So I had that same feeling.
Oh, that's cool. I never actually considered that, but that makes perfect sense now that you say it. So,
and in fact, when I watched it again, I had that same feeling. Like, is Amy going to think this is for her from the doctor? So
that's fun. That's funny. All right. Anything else about this episode that we didn't cover that anybody wants to talk about?
No,
I can't think of anything.
Great discussion, guys. All right. So, favorite quotes. Now, Tom, obviously, since you're new to the show, Jesse and I do, we just kind of pick out some favorite quotes. Very simple. And stuff there's a lot of great lines in this one, ones that we liked. Jesse, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll just do. I'll do one, and then I've got a couple more if you guys don't cover them.
Okay.
But I love the Sean. You are so on the team. Next week we've got the Crown and Anchor. We're going to annihilate them. And the Doctor gets in Sean's face, right? Annihilate? No violence. Do you understand me? Not when I'm around. Not today, not ever. I'm the Doctor, the oncoming storm. Oh, and you basically meant beat them in a football match, didn't you? Yeah, lovely. What sort of time? I just love that. Like, oh my gosh, and then it's like, never. It was very much talk about a out of date reference. Emily Latella going, never mind.
There's one for the kids these days,
Yes.
an Emily Latella reference from the 70s. There you go.
Yes.
All right, from SNL. Tom, did you have any quotes that you liked in this one?
Yeah, I had two. The dreadfully underused Amy Pond and Karen Gillan get to have the line when the Doctor is saying, "I'll just pretend to be normal. That should be easy, right?" And she says, "Have you seen you?"
Yes.
Amy always has the
one.
greatest lines.
Yeah, she's not in a lot of the episode, but she does a lot with what she has. And there's great chemistry between her and Matt Smith, too. And then the other line I like is when the Doctor is describing to Craig, he says, "I have one of those faces. People just blurt their plans out in front of me," which was very self-aware.
Yeah, that was good. A nice little nod to fans who obviously have seen that over and over and over again.
Yes.
I liked Craig talking to the Doctor saying, "Has anyone ever told you you're a bit weird?" And the Doctor replies, "They never really stop." Ever been to Paris, Craig? I can't see the point of Paris. I'm not much of a traveler. And the Doctor says, "I can tell by your sofa." Craig's like, "My sofa?" And the Doctor replies, "You're starting to look like it." It's like,
good.
Damn, son.
Yes.
It's a little harsh, but and then Sophie talking with the Doctor, where she says, "'Cause life can seem pointless. You know, Doctor, work, weekend, and there's 6 billion people on the planet doing pretty much the same." The Doctor replies, 6 billion people. Watching you two work, I'm starting to wonder where they all come from.
Yes, very nice.
And Jesse, do you have any more?
Yeah, I had one more.
Go for it.
I just love this. I'm the Doctor. Well, they call me the Doctor. I don't know why. I call me the Doctor, too. I still don't know why. I just like, because you're like, okay, he never tries to explain that. And then he's like, I don't know why I do that. Why I do that. It's very funny.
Yeah. My last one is the Doctor calling out Craig, who has just touched the ceiling rot. And he says, "I told you not to touch it. Look, what's that? Oh, it's an unfamiliar and pretty obviously poisonous substance. Oh, I know what would be really clever. I'll stick my hand in it."
Yes, very nice. Yes.
All right. So what's everybody's ratings? Tom, we'll start with you on this one. What's your rating, sir?
I am going to say, because I really like this episode. Like, it's not a legendary episode. It doesn't advance the Doctor Who canon, but it so completely executes what it's trying to do. I'm going to say it's 9 out of 10 keys on a key ring.
Okay, very nice. Well played, sir.
So I
Jesse.
was worried that I was going to be the softie because for all the reasons, this is just a perfect standalone Doctor Who episode. I just love this. And, if you were like, this would be a fun episode to show someone like, hey, here it is. So I said I would give it 9 out of 10 extra football kits.
Well, I guess I'm the East German judge this time because I'm going to give this one, just slightly under what Tom did. I'm going to give it 8.5 out of 10 timey-wimey omelets.
Oh, nice.
So it was either that or ominous rot stains I was going to go with.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think this is a solid episode, a lot of fun. It's a very different type of story. So I think it's one of those that if you're really in the mood for this, then this is a home run for you because it does have that romantic comedy feel, and with just a little sci-fi twist to it, But yeah, it's just overall it's well done, and I really love Gareth Roberts' scripts. They're always fun, always a lot of great dialogue, and he does a lot of great character moments. So I really appreciate that about his scripts. All right, reverse the polarity this time. So I was trying it really hard because this is a tricky one to think about a classic story that would, if you're kind of in the mood to watch something similar, a little similar to this story. So I thought about it and I said, okay, well, we'll just reverse the polarity, the neutron flow back to 1982 with Black Orchid. And this is the fifth serial from season 19 in 1982, written by Terrence Dudley. And this one, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. The TARDIS lands in 1925 at Cranleigh Halt, a small railway station in rural England. And this is where we have the fifth Doctor, Peter Davison, Tegan, Adric, and Nyssa walking out to find a chauffeur who's been waiting for the Doctor, mysteriously, telling him he's expected for a cricket match. And the Doctor, on a whim, kind of goes along with the invitation. So the group suddenly soon arrives at Cranleigh Hall, home of the, obviously, Cranleigh family. And the Doctor is immediately put in a cricket match. And this is where the comparison to this story comes in, is that he does superbly in this. You know, he's just fantastic. As good as the 11th Doctor was at football, the 5th Doctor was at cricket, and he brings the team back from defeat, to a win, and delighting this guy named Lord Charles Cranleigh in the process, who invites the travelers to a fancy dress costume party that evening as thanks for a splendid performance. And after a mysterious figure takes on the Doctor's masked Harlequin costume, the Doctor is blamed for the murder of a butler and an attack on Anne, a young woman who looks identical to his companion Nyssa. Using the TARDIS, the Doctor convinces the head of the police that he's telling the truth after a second body is discovered and the true murderer has started a fire at the estate. Nyssa is mistaken for Anne by the murderer, George Cranleigh, who's apparently Charles's presumed dead elder brother. But the Doctor convinces George to release Nyssa shortly before George falls off the roof to his death. After attending the funeral, Charles, Anne, and Lady Cranleigh say goodbye to the Doctor and his companions. Tegan gets a large gift box containing their fancy dress costumes as parting gifts, while the Doctor receives a further gift from Lady Cranleigh, a leather-bound copy of George's book Black Orchid, which the Doctor says he will treasure. The end. So
very nice.
So a little loose connection there. It's a little tricky on this one, but yeah. So this is where essentially the Doctor is apparently really good at sports.
Yeah, he must be. Yes.
At least two incarnations of the Doctor have been really good at sports. So listener feedback. We got a couple of our regulars, Holly Mack and Dave Proctor, writing in. So Jesse, do you want to take one while I take the other?
Sure, I'll read Holly's if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
Hey, all.
Hi, Holly.
Yes, I have to say I love this episode. We get introduced to Craig and his girlfriend Sophie, who we will see later on. The Doctor began separated from Amy, and the TARDIS was a nice plot device in this story. Doctor playing soccer, who knew he could play? The Doctor makes for an interesting roommate, and if you move, you better not count on getting your security deposit back, unless he can jiggerly pokery some fixes so that it doesn't happen. I'll wrap it up here, Holly from Wisconsin. Yes, I guess he would. You wouldn't get your security deposit back. Thank you, Holly, as always. We really, really appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, Holly. Yeah, you probably just would do something timey-wimey to reset the room that's been damaged in the process or something, I would guess. So we also have David K. Proctor, one of our regular listeners, writing in about The Lodger. Dave says, hello, TARDIS crew. I hope you're all well. This is a good episode. Poor Amy alone in the TARDIS, a million buttons that you don't understand, and no instruction manual. Well, there's probably an instruction manual, but it's propping up a table somewhere in the TARDIS, presumably, knowing the Doctor. The clearly two-story house is luring someone inside. A black mold or dry rot forms on the kitchen ceiling. Craig needs a roommate, and the Doctor needs a place. Let's see. Oh, Sophie and Craig. He had Zoe down here, but he means Sophie. Sophie and Craig can't make the leap to a couple. I wish someone would come to my front door with a bag of cash for me. Well, who doesn't want that, right?
Yes, exactly.
The Doctor is restricted to no technology. All he has to do is appear like a normal human being. Amy says, "Have you seen you?" First time we've seen the Doctor needing to bathe, well, in the modern era anyway. He often wears the same clothes, so perhaps something in the TARDIS cleans him and does the laundry while you're wearing it. Or, he's probably got the exact same clothes.
Yes.
He just changes them every day. That's all the same type costume. Let's see. The footballer asks, "Where are you strongest?" The Doctor says, "The arms." That sparked an out-loud chuckle from my wife. A true endorsement. Matt Smith actually played football before becoming an actor, so he got to show off. The Doctor and I feel the same way about wine. Yeah, I'm kind of with him on that one. I'm more a beer guy, personally. The Doctor speaks cat, or perhaps he borrowed Crookshanks from Hogwarts.
Very nice.
The time engine set is one that was on display in Cardiff when we visited the Doctor Who experience. Oh, Dave, you lucky bastard, you. I've always wanted to see that. They didn't restrict touching it either. I got to play on this and David Tennant's control room. What an experience. Well, hey, yeah, like
Very
a Doctor
nice.
Who experience, right?
Uh-huh.
Again, well, for the first time, Craig saves the world because he cares. My wife made me so proud when that crack appeared. She uh-oh'd, and I told her this went through the whole series. She asked, "Is this their Bad Wolf thing?" I was so proud. She watched Eccleston and Tennant with me, but didn't care much for Smith. She retained that since it was first on. I like the idea of a house growing an extra story. I bet we never see that again in Who. Sometimes when the Doctor and a companion get routine, the show can become formulaic. This was a refreshing break from formula. I like that occasionally. I guess that's why I like the regeneration episodes. I give this episode 9 out of 10 Rotmeisters. Stay
Nice.
healthy and keep up the good work. Thank you, David K. Proctor. So thank you, Dave.
Yes, thank you, Dave, very much so.
It's always great to hear from Dave and Holly. Always great to hear from our listeners. So if you want to be like Dave and Holly, and please do, write to us at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg for Southgate Media Group at gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter at nextstopsmg on the Twitter machine. Or Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Or Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. And Tom, thank you so much for joining us. I know we kind of went through a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So I know we went through a lot of your stuff. So is there anything else that you would love to shamelessly promote while you have the opportunity?
And how to
I'll
reach
tell you
you.
where.
And how to reach you? Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you where to buy it. That's the important part.
Even better.
So recently I started a Patreon. Patreon.com/Thom Zahler, THOMZAHLER. There I do a new page of Love and Capes a week. I do sketches of the week, all sorts of stuff. That's where my current stuff is. The latest volume of Love and Capes came out. You can get all of my stuff at ThomZ.com, THOMZ.com. And I am at Thom Zahler on Twitter and Instagram.
And I definitely encourage all our listeners to check out Tom's stuff. Support him as much as possible because his stuff is fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And
Mandatory reading, guys. Come on.
Absolutely. And, he talked about it, Webtoons. He's done a couple of series there, and Warning Label is very funny. It truly, and we joked about, I'm wearing a Warning Label t-shirt, that just the idea of asking a girl out and you immediately get this curse that say, and there's an ongoing joke about curses is a thing. I didn't know curses were a thing. So yeah, please check out Tom's work. It's appreciated. And I echo, it is so great to have you on this. Tom's been on Set Listing Bruce multiple times, talking about he originally designed our Next Stop Everywhere logo.
I was going to mention that. I completely forgot to do that. Yes, thank you for mentioning that.
He did my Set Listing Bruce logo, and he did a 5-year anniversary logo for Set Listing Bruce. So he is our official artist in resident. You can find me at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. Same again on Instagram, Facebook. You can hear me talk music. I just did an episode this week. Kenneth Womack, who is a professor at Monmouth University, his new book is The Last Year of John Lennon's Life. He talked to me about that in honor of recognition of the 40th anniversary of John Lennon's death. He is a guest that was on this week. Fascinating guy, has written multiple books on the Beatles, and so we talked a lot about that. Please check that out. Charles,
Yes.
you do a couple
Jesse.
of podcasts besides this one, and we have a big one coming up that we're all going to get the gang back together.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to reach me, please check me out at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, or Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio on Facebook, or my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere, including your Dorchwood, your Doctor Who, your Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish Audios, and more. All kinds of comic book sci-fi news and other podcasts for the Southgate Media Group, including, the Fandom Zone podcast that I do with Jesse Jackson and DJ Nick, another great special guest companion where we talk comic book TV shows. And Nick and I, we just finished up doing The Boys Season 2. And for episode 199, Jesse's coming back at long last. And we're going to be talking the Flash 1990 pilot with John Wesley Ships, Amanda Pays, Alex Desert, and more. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then for episode 200, because, got to follow up 199 with a 200, right? So for 200, we're going to be talking the 2014 Flash pilot. So we got a couple of Flash pilots, the original one with John Wesley Ships and the, modern era one with Grant Gustin from 2014, where, part of the Arrowverse. So I think it's going to be a very special couple of episodes, and I'm really glad Jesse's going to be joining us for that.
The Flash of two podcasts.
The Flash of two podcasts. I see what you did there, sir. Well played.
There are very few people that get that joke, but you are two that would get that.
Yes, exactly. Because Nick and I are both huge Flash fans, so this is a big deal for both of us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, which is currently on hiatus, but Jesse, DJ Nick, and I, we also talk the Titans TV show, the Doom Patrol TV show. Like I said, we're waiting for season 3 of both shows now that both are moving to HBO Max. So in the meantime, please check us out. A lot of people have. We've got over 400 likes on Facebook, which is amazing that we got kind of a weird global phenomenon going on with that one. And then Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, etc., etc. And currently we are going to be finally recording our big in-depth review of the Criterion Collection Blu-ray release of David Lynch's The Elephant Man. That'll be coming up soon. And we've got some more irons in the fire. Maybe you might be doing some more Twin Peaks. We haven't done that for a while, or perhaps another David Lynch film that we'll be discussing. So stay tuned for that. And then Drunk Cinema, which is a brand new kind of side gig for Zan and I, where we talk. Essentially, the premise is very simple. We sit back, we watch movies, we have adult beverages, we have adult conversation, and just have a ball watching movies together in a kind of DVD-style commentary. We've only done 2 episodes so far. We did Batman 1989 and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And coming up here next week, we're going to be recording our 3rd episode, our Christmas episode. So what better movie to watch than the ultimate Christmas movie, Die Hard? So if you enjoyed our first 2 commentaries, slightly inebriated, watching Batman or Ferris Bueller, you definitely want to come back for Die Hard. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope everybody checks that out and supports it. Tom, thank you so much for joining us, man. I had a ball talking to you and finally getting to meet you properly.
Oh, I had so much fun. I'll come back anytime.
Yeah, please do. If nothing else, you should come back and we should talk closing time. Right?
We should, yes.
That's not bad. Or if there's another story you want to talk about, feel free to drop me a line. Let me know, because we'd love to have you back anytime your schedule permits.
And,
sure. I love Stormageddon.
Yes. Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All. Yes.
And I don't know if you do not know this, Charles, but Tom is a massive Firestorm fan.
Oh, we got
And
that in
so,
common. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we might have to do a fandom zone where we cover a couple of the Firestorm episodes for that. So because
as long as you don't cover the letter columns from the 80s, I'll be okay.
You wouldn't happen to be in those letter columns, would you?
I might.
Maybe.
I can neither confirm nor deny the details of any action without permission of the secretary.
I have the same problem with the Flash 1990s comics during the Mark Waid run, especially.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I feel you.
I was very sad. I thought I knew where my Baldy Award was, and I can't find it. I had a letter published in either Action or Superman, and I won a Baldy, and for the longest time I had that. And now our guests are going, "What is a Baldy?" But once again, the two people I'm talking to are aware. So yes, we may have to have you come back on not only for this, but we should talk a little Firestorm.
Tell us about the Silver Age, Grandpa.
Yes, exactly. Yes, indeed.
All right. So next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 212, as we move to the Peter Capaldi era, and we're going to be talking once again the Husbands of River Song, which was a great episode to talk about at Christmas time. And joining us as we do our own DVD style commentary for that episode, once again Hannah Scarappa, special guest companion, rejoining us. She's been obviously busy with school and obviously doing a lot, back and forth at school or, doing her classes over the interwebs because coronavirus shakes fist. But thankfully, Hannah has it. She's saved up some time for us, and what better time to talk the Husbands of River Song than 2 days before Christmas, right here. So everybody's gonna have to wait 2 weeks for episode 212, but I guarantee it'll be worth it. Jesse, I hope you're looking forward to it. I know I am.
I am. I love that. I love that episode.
And hopefully our listeners out there will be as well. It's a great story, just a great send-off for River Song, and just a lovely romance story of its own between the 12th Doctor and River in that episode. All right. So Tom, thanks again. Jesse, thanks again. Sure. And everybody come on back. Husbands of River Song, episode 212. I can't sell it any better than that. Hannah Scarappa, right? So we'll see you next time right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.